Hi, I am SB Rawz. I'm a coach and a messy whole human. And this is Rachel Winstead joining me for another All Up in It conversation. 35-ish minutes of reporting from the complicated, exhilarating midst of learning. Rachel, I'm so excited to record this with you. You and I have done a lot of fun recording and exploring together over the years, and I'm excited to add this to our repertoire.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I know. Feels like another level of our conversations for sure.
Yeah, and I'm excited to flip the script because historically, like I've been on your podcast, the podcast you had, and you wrote about me on your blog once. So like I'm really excited that I get to highlight you this time.
Thanks.
Yeah, let's start that highlight with how you understand or describe yourself as a human these days.
As a human right now, I feel I just started teaching high school. I would say that I've been an educator before. I worked with preschoolers at one point. I've certainly like babysat a lot of teenagers. I've never taught them before though in a classroom setting. So right now, what it means to be human is being responsible, feeling responsible at least for I think like 140-ish students right now,
Wow.
which is a yeah, it's so there's a feeling of like not necessarily like responsibility, but I feel like I am a kind of a partner in other people's creative journey. Like in some cases, the very beginning of their creative journey. I think that's probably why it feels like there's some, I don't necessarily like someone to say weight because it's not necessarily negative, but I think that's the responsibility behind it. Is because I've been there on the creative journey for a long time, and I know what it's like to only just first start to recognize your potential. Um, it's a pretty magical experience though, being around all that creative learning potential like all the time. It's why I'm so tired when I get home. So
Mhm.
also that's how I am as a human right now, is just like recovering from being around um so much of that environment. Uh where I mean learning is frustrating for a lot of people. And I also have been thinking a lot about like what it means to be a human, and how we help each other like tell our stories, how we help each other um like stay curious about things, um and how we even like discuss new ideas and conflicting ideas, those kinds of things. um
Mhm.
yeah. um I in a lot of ways it feels like I, not just my classroom but also me, I feel like a container. I try to be a good container for all of that to happen. So uh I've been practicing setting boundaries a lot.
That's awesome.
So in ways that I would never imagine, not just like you can't throw that pencil, but also like yeah, like think of like speak your own truth, you have to cite your sources.
Yeah.
uh so that's that kind of thing. I'm all yeah, being a human right now is just about the learning process, and how to make that not necessarily exciting for others but at least like accessible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, that brings up like 12 different thoughts for me. Like I think about I think about like how on your podcast, the Creative Doula sessions, you did so much delightful educating on there. It was so much fun to learn about like the etymology of words and things like that. I think about how like I know that you have been freelancing and working independently for a long time, and now you've got over 100 students to sort of shepherd. And and there's also like this, like it feels like high school is in the thick of like sort of that pivotal time that I've been thinking about a lot from the other side, which is like, you know, how when we're tiny little beings, we create without thinking, right? It's just like, well, I make stuff. And then at some point we get that narrative that you have to be good at something to be able to
Yeah.
make stuff. Right. And I
Yeah.
feel like high school, and you're describing like this creative potential. And I'm curious, like, if that feels meaningful to you, that intersection of where we sort of give up creativity and also where we have the opportunity to more fully embrace it or recognize something in ourselves.
I have a lot of thoughts about that, SB. I mean, I mentioned the container and of both the classroom and sort of like how I'm like just how I contain things, and I try to get the students just used to the idea of practicing their creativity. So and also like a lot of these students like some of them might have challenges with learning. We have students who are on the spectrum. We have students who are we'll talk about it later with my nonprofit, but we do have students who are also unhoused or just experiencing like a lack of consistency, to like put it broadly. And so so I'm trying to get them used to the idea of just practicing creativity in some form or another. And even though I teach writing, I teach introduction to writing and introduction to literature. And especially with the writing class, I'm just trying to get them used to just what it feels like to write. Like just like, what is that? Yeah. How does that feel in your body? Are you like totally stuck, um or are you like constantly editing yourself? Like I mean, I wish I could just call like all of my classes like creative expression, because I I keep telling them I want the classroom is a place for everyone to learn what that looks like for them, whether you doodle while you listen, whether you need to build collages to sort of understand a concept, or whether like you need to write a song about it. So yeah, it's like right now I'm just working on I'm learning from them. Like I'm seeing how they as individuals like how they like approach ideas, if they're like a more tactile person or if they need to talk things out, which is really the fun part. I mean, for me, I like, because it's always funny when you tell them like, oh, you're like keep drawing, like let's like keep doing your drawing thing. We'll work on answering the right questions and maybe writing a paragraph, but um they're sometimes kind of surprised, because it's like, wait, you don't want this like perfectly like edited sentence or paragraph? And no, like right now it's just about feeding that creative engine for them and letting them figure out like where their potential is, I think. Yeah.
It sounds like such an interesting challenge from the position of teaching in that way. And I wonder if, like, what comes up for me is that the structure of writing in particular, like grammar and spelling and those kinds of things, are ultimately meant to ease the path of communication, and yet they can also really get in the way, right? And our colloquial way of communicating can be much more powerful, and we certainly see it used really, really beautifully in poetry and music, especially hip hop, right? Like we see these like really powerful uses of non-King's English, right? Whether it's like African American vernacular English, or it's regional English, or whatever way. And I guess I'm curious, as a person who really cares so much about communication and expression, like how do you navigate that sort of educational tension, if that's a thing?
It's funny that you mentioned hip hop, because in one of my first classes with all of the students, we listened to we listened to a Kendrick Lamar song, like one of the only Kendrick Lamar songs without swear words. But it was so he won the Pulitzer for his album Damn, and I wanted for them to see. First, I read the lyrics and I tried to have them guess like who it was, and a couple of them got it. But I wanted to show them that like literature isn't just Shakespeare. Like literature and writing are not like nobody owns those things. It can look a lot of different ways, and I think I wanted to give them an example of something like super provocative, the like as soon as I could, because yeah, I also wanted them to understand that like I'm not going to come out of the gate grading them on where they put, you know, periods and sentences, or like I mean, because I'm definitely working with like all different skill levels, and like and some of them care a lot about their like a perfect sentence. It's so funny because like because I will still get students who like I can tell they put a lot of thought and work into what they've written, and they'll feel like this. Like this kid yesterday, he was like, "Miss, I'm really sorry. My essay was horrible. It was really bad." And even like when he submitted it in the form, it said like, "This is really bad. I'm so sorry." And I read it, and he like answered my questions, and I was like, "Listen, I'm not right now. I just want to make sure you can think through stuff."
Mm-hmm.
Like you're kind of pointing something out, because it might be helpful for them if they saw kind of like where I imagine their journey to be going, where right now we're just practicing. We're just like learning these things as tools, words, and things like imagery or symbolism and what you're writing. And it might be helpful for them to know that like I'm not necessarily looking for the most perfectly crafted essay in the world, because that's such a huge it's such a huge roadblock. Like while some kids want that kind of challenge for sure, like, oh, can I get 100% on this essay? But I mean, even then, like the grades, I don't know. I have a lot of thought about grades too, and how we have to assign grades to something that somebody creates. I feel like I went off there, but
You're good.
like for me right now, it really is just about them getting used to like how there are different tools for expression, and just because you're not able to wield this tool of writing perfectly yet doesn't mean you can't use it. Like um like Kendrick Lamar, like, you know, he yeah, like I showed them the lyrics of the song Blood, and it's definitely not perfect grammar. He uses yeah, he uses like very casual language and dialogue in the song, and but it's like it was just a really good example to me of like he won the Pulitzer, y'all. Like if you care, like not that awards even matter, but like um but what we have been calling literature, what we have been calling like writing, and anything else that falls into those categories, like it's not necessarily like there are a lot of different ways of defining it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of different ways of telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably my major, like my mission. And it was one of the first things I said in class, is that everybody deserves a place to tell their story. Like everybody gets that space. That is, it's your right to learn how to do that. And so like, so the year I'll spend with them is like we'll definitely have to set boundaries around it. Not everybody's going to want feedback on their writing or want to read their essays aloud, but if they do, like let's give them a space for that and figure out how to do that with other teenagers in the room, some of whom are probably being jerks at times, but you know,
are sometimes.
yeah, yeah. So much of it is about like helping them to understand boundaries and setting, like that the classroom is a safe space, for expression. And I try to tell them too, like, for a long time, actually, in our country, not everybody was able to express themselves. I taught them a little bit about how Indigenous people living here, for instance, like they couldn't speak their language, they had to assimilate and speak English, and they weren't allowed to share. They weren't even allowed to share like their origin stories or their dances or other traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to start out with that, like to let the kids know like what I was about, like up front. That I really do believe everybody deserves a space to express themselves. Which is hard when they have a dress code.
Yeah.
But I mean, but yeah, it's tough because like in this ideal world, like they could show up however they wanted to, and we would have all the space and materials to do what I would like for them to express themselves exactly how they wanted. But maybe we'll get there.
You and I were, I guess, both out of high school by the time, we were both out of high school by the time No Child Left Behind became a thing, right? And this like real, like rigidifying, if that's a word, of like this whole thing. And I hear you going in a really, really different direction. And earlier you said that you really feel responsible for them. And I'm wondering what is feeling responsible for or even to them mean to you in the context of having this real focus of creating safe space for their voices?
It means, it means being of like, I don't necessarily like the word consistency, but like just showing up for them I mean, it's great because sometimes all I have to do is show up for them, and like they know that they can come into the classroom and they're going to get somebody who is like a cheerleader for like you should see I'm ridiculous. And literally it's like anything that they want to create, or like whether that's drawing or like messing around with stickers or poetry or whatever. So just like trying to show up for them as somebody who will, that they can, like at least they know with me they have a place to express those things. Which really sucked because I was out. Of course I got sick because I'm in a high school, like in this setting with like so like gross teenagers. They're not gross, but like
they have cooties, right? You went from being at home most of the time to being in a room full of
it's a lot to adapt to. Also for my immune system. And the guilt that I felt, I needed to take care of myself, but the guilt that I felt for just for like not being there when they walked into the classroom, and like after me establishing like I really want for this to be a comfortable space for everybody. But I think they understand how much I care. That definitely comes across. I've gotten feedback that I have a lot of energy, so I feel like that's a good sign. Like that's a good sign. I mean, they pick up on a lot. I have to realize like I can't, and I also don't have a poker face, so I like they know how I'm feeling most of the time for sure. And I want for them to but I also want for them to understand that like even if I'm not there every day or having the best day, that the classroom is also theirs. It's I try to make sure the classroom like reflects them as well. And that they feel it is an environment where they can show up however they need to, and and express themselves however they need to, as long as it doesn't hurt others. And in general, the whole school is that place. Like a lot of the other teachers, obviously, like are of the same mindset. And yeah, and we know that's like for some students, it is like the safest place that they have. So God, I mean, well, and so much of our day is just figuring out, like, did that student like have to leave their house in the middle of the night, or does that student even have a house right now? If they're sleeping through class, like, there might be a really good reason for it. Like, they might have had to watch, their siblings in the middle of the night for whatever. Like, you just don't know. You just don't know where people are coming from. I mean, period. You don't know where people are coming from. So it really is a reminder. Oh my God, it's such a reminder all the time that, like, just because I'm showing up this way doesn't mean they're always going to match what I like. I mean, yeah, they definitely don't always match what I'm doing. Even if it doesn't matter how excited I am about a story, like, some of them are just going to give me the stare. Like, what the hell is she even talking about? So, and I'm still learning with them. When I remember that I am also learning all of this stuff still. Like, maybe I've encountered it before, especially because I loved English in high school. I was an English major with a medieval and Renaissance studies minor, and and I've been writing for decades now. Like, yeah, I've learned a lot, but I'm still learning with them. It helps for me when I think about myself as like a partner in their education. And when I think of myself as an educator and not necessarily a teacher. I mean, we call ourselves teachers, but educator has a better feel to it for me. Because then I've realized, like, I've always been an educator. Like, as a writer, you're an educator.
Sure.
You have to communicate. I mean, you don't have to, but you're trying to communicate and teach others maybe in some way, or like guide people through a topic. So
yeah.
So I mean, a blog article is way different than a lesson plan for for a room full of teenagers, for sure. So that's also the part where I'm learning is how can I make them how do I inspire like curiosity? And of course, I kept thinking about curiosity before our conversation, because you and I have had long conversations about it. But how can we, what are especially with teenagers today, they're getting information from so it's so wildly different than when we were in high school. Like, the amount of information they have access to, the amount of misinformation they have access to. How can I make a lesson relevant to them? And also, is there some way that I can make them feel like connected to it enough where they can feel that curiosity and kind of and want to chase that for a little bit. Yeah, it's a lot to figure out. I mean, it feels like a tough battle.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. And when I project into your shoes, I notice a lot of excitement and also a lot of discomfort. And I wonder, if discomfort's a thing for you, and two, what are the tools, internal and external, that are aiding your learning journey right now?
So as far as I guess as far as my own learning journey as a teacher, I mean, thankfully there are a lot of resources out there for teachers. It does get I mean, there are still a lot of ideas around what education needs to look like. And so while I do have resources from other teachers, I'm kind of relying on my I mean, a lot of times I'm going with my gut. So my self-care tools right now are, I have to rely, I mean, it's something that I work at all the time, obviously. And I mean, you and I have had lots of conversations about just about around self-care. And so I mean, just like breathing exercises for one. And I actually shared some of those with the kids the other day too. Instead of being in our heads all the time, like what does it mean to, to try and understand ourselves and our body and as a human. And I think breath is just a really great way of accessing that.
Agreed.
And the tool of empathy, which is like something like I'm definitely an empath. I know a lot of people, would consider themselves empaths. For me though, I have to be extra like aware of those feelings of empathy in the classroom because it can almost be like a distraction. Wanting to really understand why somebody is having a bad day, and then having to also having to show up with empathy for 20 other people at the same time. So I would say, I mean, gosh, I don't know, tools are a tough one because I feel like I'm still I'm still learning like what works for me. I've been I've also I figured out also that if I don't have if I don't have my agenda and my a map of what my week looks like, it's really hard to show up and feel feel prepared. I know that sounds really obvious, but I know some people just wing it in the classroom. They've been doing it long enough that they kind of know what they want to do. But I don't know. It's frustrating for me to hear from people who teach that they have their, I have my whole year planned out. I'm just how could you're meeting new people every class year. How can you know how you're going to teach all of them? Yes, we have to meet state standards for things, but those are not my tools. The state standards for stuff, I'm trying to make sure I'm teaching them about reading comprehension or writing composition and that kind of stuff. But I mean, the tool of more than anything, it's the tool of listening. I'm listening all day long. And taking notes when it's necessary, or writing behavior referrals if I hear something that I'm oh, okay, I need to take care of that. But I've for sure had to work a lot more on listening and not just listening to how what they're saying in our class discussions, but listening to conversations that they might have with their friends, or what's going on in the hallways, or and just kind of, I don't know, the job requires this level of awareness that's I mean, it's exhausting. That's not a normal thing that people have to do.
Yeah.
Is to be try to be aware of what hundreds of kids are doing every day. But that's why the listening part is so important, because sometimes kids will just yell at each other because they just need to yell. Sometimes if somebody sounds angry, it's because they're feeling anger, and they're trying to express it and understand it. And so when I use the tool of listening, it's to help, especially in the position that I'm in. I use that tool of listening to again, just try to make sure there is an environment where everybody feels like they can learn still.
Yeah.
And to do that, like you have to have a lot of your like basic needs met. So for the kids that don't necessarily know where their next meal is coming from, like the school provides meals for one, but like I make sure I have snacks in the classroom, which I have to buy constantly because there's a lot of teenage boys. Rewards, I hate the idea of like a reward system, but like snacks are a great way to convince people to do stuff sometimes. So
it works for me. And also it's a good segue to spotlighting the nonprofit that you mentioned earlier, because it's not all about rewards, right? Sometimes it's about helping them have enough fuel just to pay attention, right?
Yeah. That nonprofit is called it's Youth on Their Own. I don't know if they're outside of Tucson where I'm at, but yeah, they're here in Tucson at least. And they provide transportation passes for students who might need it. They can provide a lot of basic needs like clothing or hygiene products and stuff like that. And they also work directly with high schools to help the kids graduate, just because of how, I mean, the statistics of anybody who is unhoused and not having a high school diploma, just like if we can ensure that that they have that diploma, it definitely gives them a leg up. So so I'm pretty excited about that nonprofit. It's a really good organization.
Yeah.
So
thank you for bringing them in, and
yeah,
thank you for what you're doing for those kids. I get so much hope and just hope out of knowing that there are all these young people out there getting support from people like you and being raised in these like really conscious, thoughtful ways. And it makes me very hopeful. So thank you for being a part of that.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. I don't think, Ray, that I've ever gotten to the end of a conversation with you and thought like, yes, that is a complete conversation. Like, I feel like you and I always end with ellipses.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll always have more to talk about.
Exactly. Thanks for joining me in this space for this conversation and for sharing some of what you're all up in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And to you and to me and to anybody who's watching, I wish us all ease and joy in the midst of all of our learning curves.